Hi, and thank you for joining me on the College Admissions Testing ELP presentation. My name is Troy Bergman. I'm one of the counselors at Liberty High School. I work with students with last names A through G, but I'm also the ELP counselor. So it's part of my job is to put this information together and get this out to our ELP identified students and families. If you have any questions or need to reach me, you can contact me at the school at 319-688-1354, or you can email me at the school as well. Just some basics about the college admissions process. Most students will begin applying between their junior and senior year and finishing up those applications their senior year. Most applications are online applications. Students, you're going to tell them a little bit about yourself, courses you've taken, grades you've received, and also your standardized test scores. So those standardized test scores for college admissions, most common, are the SAT and ACT. And these are standardized exams that let colleges or universities evaluate how ready you are to complete college-level coursework. Most of these tests will be taken your junior year, maybe some into your senior year, with some practice tests throughout sophomore and junior year as well. So how important are these admissions tests? Well, the percentage of colleges reporting that they are considerably or moderately important is 83%. So again, there's a lot of other things that go into accepting students into colleges and universities. For instance, the grades that you've received in your classes, as well as taking the right kind of classes, those college prep classes. But you can see that these admissions scores are an important admissions factor into getting into a college or university of your choice. Just sort of the general makeup of the SAT or ACT. The SAT consists of sort of two areas, and then those scores are combined for a total score between 1,400 and 1,600. And then the ACT has 4 subtests, and then those subtests are averaged for a composite score of 1 through 36. So the SAT has a reading and writing portion up to 800, and then a math portion up to 800 as well. So those scores are typically combined for your overall score. So if you hear a student say they had a 1,400 on the SAT, it just means that combined score of reading and writing and math equaled 1,400. For the for the ACT, again, the English, reading, math, and science scores, all these sub-scores are added and then divided by 4 and rounded to the nearest point. Obviously some other differences. There's no science portion to the SAT. That's unique to the ACT. And then also in the math test, math portion of both of those, the SAT, there's 2 different sections. One you can use a calculator, one you cannot. And for the ACT, it's just one multiple choice section, and you can use a calculator on all the problems for the ACT. There's also an optional essay or writing for both the SAT and the ACT. Not a lot of schools require this, but there are some, and so you definitely want to look and see at the schools that you're interested in to see if this is a required thing for you to do. You can't just go back and take the essay or just take the writing. And so one recommendation would be, if you're at all looking at schools that might require it or recommend it, you may want to just take it while you're there. It's about another hour onto the SAT or the ACT, but at least you wouldn't have to go back to take that again just to get in the essay or the writing. Score we get asked quite often is what's a good score? And that's a little bit subjective because it really kind of depends on where you're trying to go. Each school sort of has its own test requirements. And obviously, the more selective the school, the higher that score will likely need to be. I've added some examples here. So our Regent schools, Iowa and Iowa State, you can see the 25th to 75th percentile. So again, about 50% of the students that make up sort of the bulk of the students that are attending that school would have an ACT range of 23 to 28 or 22 to 28. But you can see some more selective schools down the list. Notre Dame, Northwestern, their ACT band is a little bit higher with 33 to 35 at both of those schools. And then just to give sort of some context, University of Oregon, a state school out on the West Coast, again, you can see their requirements are very similar to our state schools here in Iowa. So one thing to keep in mind that, the SAT and ACT score is just one part of who you are as a student, but do keep in mind, again, we saw these are important, an important part to that admissions process. So something you definitely want to prepare for. There's also some scholarship implications to your SAT or ACT score. A lot of schools have sort of moved to this merit-based system based on GPA and ACT or SAT score. Using an example here from Michigan State University, so you just want to, not only look at, well, what do I need to get in, or what's most likely going to get me in, but once you get your test score, you may want to look and see, okay, well, if I have let's say a 3.9 GPA and I have a 28 ACT, that's guaranteeing me $10,000 in merit-based aid. But if I can increase that ACT from 28 to 29, now I have $15,000 in merit-based aid. And so you'll just want to look at the financial aid website of the college or universities that you're looking at to see kind of where you are in that merit-based aid. And you may want to, even though you may have a score that's good enough to get in, you may still want to take the test so that you can get potentially more scholarship money. Just some other kind of additional score things that I'll go through quickly. Each school might have sort of a different reporting system. Some schools will want all of your scores. Some schools will allow you to select. So when you register for the test, you can choose to send your scores to any school you want. Certainly, if you're looking at more selective schools, you may want to reserve those scores and then just supply test scores that sort of, once you've taken all of your standardized tests, that maybe sort of put your best foot forward, so to speak. Some schools will also use something called super scores, and this is just sort of allows you to mix or match individual subscores from different test dates to get you to the highest super score. And so I've included an example here of a student who's taken the test, the ACT 3 different times, 2 different composite scores. But once you sort of take the highest subscores out of those 3, the student's super composite score is 2 points higher than one of their other scores. So again, just something you may hear in that admissions process, just so you have an idea of what that is. Some schools are moving to, or you may hear schools have a test optional pathway for admissions. This is growing. It's grown about 25% over the last 15 years. The growing number of selective schools are allowing this as well. So test optional, they're going to rely a little bit more on the coursework that you've taken, essays, maybe an interview. There could be a student portfolio, things like that, rather than just your standardized test scores. Things to consider. Number one, you're probably a pretty good test taker. One of the qualifications to get into ELP is to score in the 99th percentile of the Iowa assessments. And so there's a pretty good chance that you're a good test taker, and your ACT or SAT scores will probably reflect that. So most students will still choose to report their scores and kind of apply in a traditional fashion. Just do some research about the percentage of applicants that are using test optional. If the high majority of students are still supplying their test scores, then you may want to do that as well. But ultimately, just have a conversation with the admissions representative, and they'll be able to tell you kind of your best option. Test optional could be a good pathway if you're looking for a really selective school, but maybe fall just outside of sort of, their band of test for that 25th or 75th percentile. I won't spend a lot of time on this, but there are the SAT subject tests. So some schools do require this. Only about 2% of colleges require these tests. So a very small percentage of students will need to worry about this. But there are some schools out there that do require it or recommend it. And so I've included that list here. So you can see Caltech, MIT, Cornell are some schools that require them. Some other ones highly recommended or strongly recommended, a lot of the Ivy League schools or some other selective schools like Duke or Georgetown. There's some other schools there that you can see that will consider those test scores as part of the admissions process as well. So again, just something you may want to make sure when you're looking at admissions and all of the tests that might be required to apply to that school. Another thing we get asked frequently is, well, which one should I take? I've included this grid, and it's actually in a book that I'm going to send along with you as well, that you'll be able to look up to sort of see maybe which one you sort of favor. And the best way to find that out is to just, take those practice tests, take that PSAT, take that pre-ACT to get some projected test scores to see which one might be best suited for you. The PSAT is just offered once nationally. It's on Wednesday, October 19th this year. Deadline to sign up was yesterday, actually, September 18th. If you did not do that, please let me know ASAP so that I can see if we can still get you signed up for that. It is free this year. The PSAT is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test. Only your junior year score would qualify you for that. So sophomores taking the test, it's really just sort of a practice for you to take that following year. It does help kind of identify your strengths and weaknesses and can help you sort of determine, well, where do I maybe need to focus on my test prep? And you'll get an SAT projected score as well. So just briefly on the National Merit Scholarship Program, out of the 1.5 million juniors that will take the junior PSAT, only about 50,000 will be commended students, and of that, only about 16,000 will become semifinalists. We do have 4 semifinalists here at Liberty this year, so we're super proud of that. And then once you become a semifinalist, it's just completing some application and submitting some test scores to potentially become a finalist or a scholar and receive some scholarship money at colleges and universities that are National Merit sponsor schools. The pre-SAT, we will offer that again this year in December. We haven't determined a test date on that, but I'll certainly be sending out information as that becomes closer. Again, help identify some strengths and weaknesses, and we'll give you an ACT projected score there as well. Timeline, if you are a sophomore, really look at taking the PSAT or pre-ACT this year or both, getting those results back in early 2020, and then begin some test prep then in the spring moving into the next year. Again, very few of you, but you could start taking that SAT subject test if applicable this summer as well. Juniors, sort of 2 typical pathways. The most typical would be taking taking those practice tests in the fall and winter, and then taking the actual tests in the spring. And then, sitting there, your second sitting, or if you would feel like you need to take it again, then in the fall of your senior year. And then there is an early testing pathway for juniors maybe that want to get all of their testing done at the end of their junior year to really focus on those college applications. Fall of their senior year might start taking the tests in a little bit earlier in the fall, winter of their junior year, and then the second time in the spring if they feel like they need it. A number of test prep resources out there. Here's a list of paid resources that you can use. I do want to kind of a little bit of a plug for the Compass Education Group. A lot of the materials that I've used are from their booklet that I'll be sending with you as well. Mr. Ingersoll has presented at Selective College presentation at the Spring College Fair at West. So you'll get some more information about that as that becomes closer in 2020. But just a lot of great information from them. It's kind of what they do is help students prepare for these tests and be able to get into those selective schools. And you can see a list of other resources there that do have paid tutoring or paid programs that you can go through. This isn't an exhaustive list. I know there's some other resources out there, but this is just kind of a short list of things out there. There are a number of free resources as well that are listed there. Both ACT and SAT sort of have their own free prep out there, and then there's a couple of websites or some things available at the public libraries that are free for students as well that they can utilize. So again, thank you for listening today. If you have any questions, please email me or call me. Look forward to hearing from you, and we'll see you again soon. Thank you.